You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These words from Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman Stoic, hold a wisdom that feels as relevant today as it did 2,000 years ago. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves frustrated by unfairness? A rude comment at work, a betrayal by someone we trusted, or a moment when we're treated in a way that feels completely unjust. It's a universal experience, and yet our reactions to it often leave us feeling even worse. But what if there was a way to deal with unfair people that didn't cost us our peace of mind? In this video, we'll explore how the timeless philosophy of Stoicism can help you handle these moments with grace, strength, and unshakable calm. By the end, you'll see unfairness not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to practice the art of composure and stay true to yourself, no matter the circumstances. What makes someone unfair? Is it their actions, their intentions, or perhaps the gap between what they do and what we believe they should do? The Stoics teach us that unfairness, like so many other judgments we make, is often a matter of perception. For the Stoics, human behavior isn't driven by some inherent evil or malice. More often, it's the result of ignorance, self-interest, or misguided priorities. People act unfairly not because they wake up each morning with a plan to harm others, but because they are acting according to their own flawed understanding of the world. Think about it. How many times have you been hurt or frustrated by someone's actions, only to later realize that their behavior wasn't necessarily about you at all? Maybe they were overwhelmed by their own struggles, or maybe they lacked the wisdom to see the consequences of what they were doing. From a Stoic perspective, this doesn't excuse unfair behavior, it simply explains it. Recognizing this truth can help us approach these situations with more compassion and less emotional turmoil. For example, imagine you're working on a group project and one team member constantly avoids their responsibilities. At first glance, it's easy to label that person as unfair. After all, why should you carry the extra weight while they do nothing? But what if their behavior isn't rooted in a desire to hurt you? Perhaps they're overwhelmed with personal issues, or maybe they've never been taught how to collaborate effectively. Instead of jumping to indignation, a Stoic would pause and consider the bigger picture. They'd remind themselves that this person's actions are shaped by their own limitations, not by a deliberate intention to wrong you. Another key insight from Stoicism is that our sense of unfairness often arises from our own expectations. When we believe someone should act a certain way, be kinder, be more responsible, or show more integrity, we set ourselves up for disappointment when they fall short. But here's the hard truth: they aren't obligated to meet our expectations. Just as we are free to think and act according to our own reasoning, so are they. Does this mean we ignore bad behavior? Absolutely not. It simply means that we no longer let their behavior control our peace of mind. Marcus Aurelius captured this idea perfectly when he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This isn't a pessimistic view, it's a preparation. It's about accepting the reality of human nature so that we're not caught off guard when people act according to their own flaws and limitations. So when you encounter someone you believe is unfair, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, are they acting out of ignorance or self-interest rather than true malice? Is it possible that my expectations of them are contributing to my feelings of frustration? By reframing the way we view unfairness, we give ourselves the power to respond with calm and rationality rather than anger or resentment. And in doing so, we take another step toward mastering the art of inner peace. Let's take a moment to explore one of the most important principles in Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. This idea, often associated with the teachings of Epictetus, is deceptively simple yet profoundly life-changing. At its core, it tells us that there are two categories in life: things we can control and things we cannot. The Stoics emphasize that we should focus only on the things within our control and let go of the rest. But how does this apply when dealing with unfair people? Epictetus put it plainly: some things are up to us and some things are not. What's up to us? Our thoughts, our actions, our choices. What's not up to us? Other people's opinions, their behaviors, the choices they make. And here's the key insight: when we waste energy trying to control what isn't ours to control, we invite unnecessary frustration and suffering into our lives. But when we recognize the limits of our influence, we free ourselves to focus on what truly matters, our own responses. To illustrate this, let's consider an everyday scenario. Imagine you're driving during rush hour traffic and another driver speeds past you, cutting you off aggressively. Your heart races and your first instinct might be to react emotionally. Maybe you get angry, yell at them in your car, or dwell on the unfairness of their behavior. Why should they get away with putting you in danger? But here's the truth: no amount of anger or frustration can undo what just happened. You can't control the way that driver behaves. You can't change their lack of consideration or force them to be more thoughtful on the road. The only thing you can control is how you choose to respond. A Stoic would remind themselves in that moment of the dichotomy of control. They might think, I can't control how that person drives, but I can control whether I let this ruin my day. Instead of giving in to anger, they could focus on what they can do. Take a deep breath, maintain a safe distance, and continue their drive calmly. In doing so, they've reclaimed their emotional energy and avoided letting someone else's actions dictate their state of mind. Now, let's apply this same principle to unfair people in other areas of life. Say your boss takes credit for your hard work in a meeting, or your friend backs out of an agreement at the last minute. While it's natural to feel frustrated or even hurt, it's important to remember that their actions are not within your control. What is in your control? Your ability to communicate calmly, to stand up for yourself assertively, or to decide how much trust you place in that person moving forward. You don't have to condone their behavior, but you also don't have to let it throw you into turmoil. Understanding this principle doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent to unfairness. It simply means directing your energy toward the areas where it can make a real difference. By focusing on your own thoughts, actions, and decisions, you empower yourself to rise above the chaos and stay anchored in your own values. The dichotomy of control is a tool that allows us to reclaim our peace, even in the face of challenging people or situations. By letting go of what we can't influence and doubling down on what we can, we start to feel less like victims of circumstance and more like masters of our own destiny. So the next time someone acts unfairly, ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, release the need to fix or fight it. Instead, center your energy on the one thing that always remains yours: how you choose to respond. Unfair behavior has a way of striking at our core. When someone treats us poorly, it often feels like a personal attack, like they're deliberately targeting us. But more often than not, the unfair actions of others aren't about us at all. They're a reflection of their own struggles, flaws, or misunderstandings. The Stoics understood this well and offered a powerful tool to help us reframe these situations: cognitive detachment. Cognitive detachment doesn't mean ignoring the problem or pretending it didn't happen. Instead, it's about stepping back and looking at the situation objectively. It's the practice of reminding yourself that just because something feels personal doesn't mean it is personal. Marcus Aurelius captures this idea beautifully when he writes, Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? This quote is a reminder to humanize others, to acknowledge that their actions, however unfair, often stem from the same imperfections we all share. Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine you've been passed over for a promotion at work. You've been working hard, putting in extra hours, and contributing valuable ideas, yet someone less experienced in your view, was chosen instead. It feels unfair. Worse yet, it feels like an intentional slight, as though your boss doesn't see your worth or deliberately overlooks your contributions. But stop for a moment. Consider the situation through the lens of detachment. What if this decision wasn't about you at all? Maybe your boss had pressures from higher management to promote someone based on a specific need or skill set. Or maybe they were simply unaware of all you've done because they're caught up in their own day-to-day challenges. By detaching from the assumption that this decision was personal, you can redirect your energy from resentment to productive action. Instead of dwelling on the perceived slight, you could schedule a conversation with your boss to clarify how you can grow into a leadership role next time. Reframing unfairness as impersonal doesn't just help you maintain your calm, it also creates mental clarity. When your emotions are no longer clouded by feelings of injustice, you're better equipped to make rational decisions about how to proceed. This might mean having a constructive conversation, reassessing your expectations of others, or simply accepting the situation as it is and moving forward. Another example of this comes from everyday interactions. Think back to the last time someone was unexpectedly rude to you. Maybe a cashier snapped at you in the grocery store, or a stranger gave you a harsh look for no apparent reason. It's easy to take these moments personally, to let them linger in your mind and sour your mood. But cognitive detachment challenges you to ask a different question. How likely is it that their behavior was really about me? Chances are they were dealing with their own stress, frustration, or circumstances, and you just happened to be in their path. By detaching from the emotional pull of personalization, you free yourself from unnecessary hurt, allowing their actions to remain theirs, not yours. The Stoics knew that holding on to someone else's negativity is like picking up a hot coal. It only burns you. By practicing cognitive detachment, we learn to let go of the coal before it can harm us. The next time you encounter unfair behavior, pause and ask yourself, is this really about me or am I making it personal? With this simple shift in perspective, you can respond with calm and clarity, staying rooted in your own inner strength while letting others' actions belong solely to them. When faced with unfair treatment, our immediate instinct is often to react. Maybe it's a sharp retort, an angry glare, or even just replaying the situation in our minds, fueling feelings of frustration and indignation. But one of the most powerful tools the Stoics offer us is the practice of pausing. This pause, this brief moment of stillness between the stimulus and the response, is where our greatest strength lies. The Stoics understood that we cannot always control our initial emotional reactions. After all, emotions are natural. Someone cuts in line ahead of you and you feel irritated. A friend betrays your trust and you feel hurt. These emotional responses happen almost automatically. But here's the key: while we may not control the arrival of an emotion, we always have a choice about what we do next. And that choice begins with the pause. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you pause, you're reclaiming that power. You're stepping back from the pull of your emotions and giving yourself the space to assess the situation from a higher perspective. Instead of letting an unfair act drag you into a spiral of anger or resentment, the pause allows you to observe your feelings without being ruled by them. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague openly dismisses your idea in front of everyone. Instantly, you feel a wave of anger rising up. Your heart races and your mind floods with thoughts of how wrong they were and how you should defend yourself. In that moment, your emotions are in control, pushing you toward a potentially heated response. But if you can pause just for a few seconds, you create a gap between what happened and how you choose to respond. In that gap, you can breathe, reflect, and ask yourself, what response aligns with my values? What approach will serve me best in the long term? This is where practicing the pause becomes transformative. Instead of reacting impulsively, maybe by snapping back or shutting down, you could choose to respond thoughtfully. You might calmly ask them to elaborate on their perspective or save your defense for a more private, constructive conversation later. By pausing, you've taken control of the narrative and, more importantly, stayed true to your own sense of dignity and composure. The Stoics likened emotions to being swept away by a strong current. If you dive in immediately, the current drags you wherever it pleases. But if you stand still, anchoring yourself firmly on the shore, you can observe the water rushing by without losing your footing. Pausing gives you that anchor. It allows you to watch your emotions, acknowledge them, and let them pass without being carried away. Here's a practical way to make this pause a habit. Whenever you feel the sting of unfairness, take a slow, deep breath. Remind yourself that this feeling is temporary and that you don't need to act on it immediately. Ask yourself questions like, what would my best self do in this situation? Or how can I respond in a way that reflects who I want to be? These small moments of reflection can prevent regrettable reactions and set the stage for wiser, more grounded responses. Practicing the pause isn't something that happens overnight. It's a skill that grows with time and intention. But each time you pause, each time you observe your emotions without acting on them, you strengthen your ability to stay calm and centered, no matter what life throws at you. And in a world full of challenges and unfairness, that ability is nothing short of a superpower. When confronted with unfair behavior, it's easy to see the other person as the antagonist in your story, someone who has wronged you and deserves to be called out or punished. But the Stoics offer us a radically different perspective. They introduce us to the concept of sympathia, a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all people and our shared humanity. At its heart, sympathia reminds us that every person we encounter is, in one way or another, just like us, struggling with their own challenges, shaped by their own experiences and flawed in their own ways. It's through this lens of understanding that we can approach unfairness with empathy instead of hostility. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, captures this idea beautifully when he writes, "Whenever you are angry at someone, consider that you have made the same mistake yourself." This quote is a powerful invitation to look inward and recognize our own imperfections. Have we never acted unfairly, even unintentionally? Have we never spoken out of turn, misjudged someone, or let our own frustrations spill out onto others? When we start to see ourselves in those who wrong us, it becomes much harder to respond with anger and resentment. Instead, empathy naturally takes root. Let's apply this to a real-world situation. Imagine a close friend forgets your birthday. It stings, doesn't it? You might be tempted to interpret their forgetfulness as a sign that they don't care about you. But before jumping to conclusions, consider their perspective. What might they be going through? Are they dealing with stress at work, family issues, or other personal challenges that made them distracted? Reflecting on sympathia, you might realize that their mistake isn't a reflection of how much they value you, but rather a reflection of their own human limitations. This moment of empathetic understanding turns what could have been a source of resentment into an opportunity for grace. Another key aspect of *Sympathia* is understanding that people often act unfairly because they don't see the full consequences of their actions. They might be so caught up in their own struggles or desires that they fail to consider how their behavior impacts others. Returning to Seneca's wisdom, he also writes, "No one willingly does wrong." In other words, when people act unfairly, it's often because they lack the perspective, knowledge, or emotional maturity to act differently. This ignorance doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does help us reframe it. Instead of seeing their actions as personal attacks, we can interpret them as the inevitable missteps of someone navigating their own imperfect journey. Consider a boss who constantly criticizes your work in front of others. At first, this behavior might seem rooted in malice or a desire to undermine you. But through the lens of *Sympathia*, you might begin to wonder, is their criticism driven by their own insecurities? Are they afraid of appearing weak in front of their team? Are they under immense pressure from their superiors? This shift in thinking doesn't mean you tolerate the behavior or avoid addressing it. It simply means you approach the situation with compassion rather than hostility. Instead of reacting with defensiveness, you might choose to have a calm and constructive conversation, aiming to understand their perspective while asserting your own boundaries. *Sympathia* doesn't just benefit the person who wronged us, it liberates us as well. By interpreting unfairness as a reflection of someone else's struggles rather than a deliberate attack, we free ourselves from the weight of resentment and anger. We stop carrying emotional burdens that were never really ours to begin with. Empathy allows us to stay true to our values: kindness, patience, and rationality, even when others fall short of theirs. So the next time someone treats you unfairly, take a step back and reflect on *Sympathia*. Ask yourself, where might this behavior be coming from? What challenges or flaws might this person be grappling with? And most importantly, how can I respond in a way that reflects my own character rather than their faults? By choosing empathy, you not only elevate yourself above the unfairness, you also strengthen the bonds of our shared humanity. The Stoics believed that the essence of a good life lies not in external circumstances but in the pursuit and practice of virtue. For them, virtue, living in alignment with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline, was the ultimate measure of success and fulfillment. External events, whether fair or unfair, remain beyond our control. What truly matters is how we respond to them. This perspective is especially powerful when we face unfairness. While we might not be able to change the unfair actions of others, we always have the ability to act virtuously in response. And in doing so, we stay true to the Stoic ideal of living a life guided by our highest principles. It's tempting to let unfair treatment push us off course. When someone criticizes us unjustly, spreads rumors, or takes advantage of us, our knee-jerk reaction might be to retaliate, prove them wrong, or act out of anger. But the Stoics would remind us that external slights or criticisms don't diminish our worth. Only failing to uphold our own values can do that. Marcus Aurelius famously said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, maintaining your virtue, your integrity, patience, and rationality is the ultimate response to unfairness. It's a silent statement that says, "Your actions don't control me. I remain who I am." Let's take an example of responding with integrity to unfair criticism. Imagine you're at work and during a team meeting, a colleague publicly blames you for a mistake that wasn't your fault. The accusations are not only untrue but also deeply embarrassing. In this moment, you might feel the urge to immediately defend yourself, perhaps even by pointing out their faults in retaliation. But what would the Stoics advise? They would urge you to pause, reflect, and ask yourself, What response aligns with my virtue? What action reflects the person I aspire to be? Rather than sinking to their level, you could calmly present the facts without hostility or blame. Or, if the situation allows, you might choose to address the matter privately later. By doing this, you not only maintain your integrity, but you also demonstrate a level of composure and professionalism that others are likely to respect, even if they don't acknowledge it outright. This approach doesn't mean ignoring injustice or letting people walk all over you. The Stoics weren't passive. They believed in addressing wrongs, but they emphasized doing so in a way that remains true to your character. Justice, after all, is one of the core virtues of Stoicism. Responding to unfairness with wisdom and fairness, not with spite or impulsivity, allows you to correct the situation without compromising your principles. Moreover, handling unfairness with virtue builds character over time. Each time you choose patience over anger, kindness over bitterness, or courage over fear, you strengthen your inner resolve. You become a person who isn't easily shaken by the storms of life, a person who remains steady, dignified, and in control. Epictetus reminds us that life will test us, and it's in these moments of challenge that we have the opportunity to practice and develop our virtues. Facing unfairness, then, becomes less of a misfortune and more of a training ground for becoming the best version of ourselves. Think about how rare it is to see someone respond to unfairness with absolute integrity. When others act unjustly, most people escalate the conflict or become consumed with bitterness. But the person who chooses virtue over vengeance stands out. They serve as a reminder that true strength comes not from overpowering others, but from mastering oneself. This is the Stoic path: to prioritize your character over your circumstances and to find freedom in living a life anchored in virtue. So the next time you're treated unfairly, ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be in this moment? By choosing virtue, you not only rise above the situation, you align yourself with a higher purpose. You demonstrate to yourself and to the world that your principles are unshakable even in the face of challenge. And in doing so, you embody the Stoic ideal, a life defined not by what happens to you, but by how you choose to live. It's important to address a common misconception about Stoicism. Many people assume that embracing Stoic principles means passively accepting whatever life throws at you, including unfairness. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Stoicism isn't about surrendering to injustice or allowing others to walk all over you. Instead, it's about practicing what I'd call intelligent acceptance. This means acknowledging reality as it is without fighting against it emotionally, while still taking thoughtful, constructive action where it's possible and appropriate. At its core, Stoicism teaches us to separate what we can control from what we cannot. When faced with something unfair, intelligent acceptance begins with acknowledging the situation for what it is: something that has already occurred and cannot be undone. Resisting reality or wishing it were different only wastes energy and amplifies our frustration. However, acceptance does not mean resignation. It doesn't mean shrugging off unfair treatment and doing nothing in response. It means facing challenges with a clear mind and acting in a way that reflects reason rather than anger or desperation. Let's consider a relatable example. Suppose a coworker takes credit for your idea during a meeting with senior leadership. It's an undeniably unfair situation, and your initial reaction might be anger, embarrassment, or the urge to confront them aggressively. But Stoicism offers an alternative approach. Instead of letting emotions take over, you pause and accept the reality. It happened, and there's no rewinding the clock. From this mental state of calm, you can then think clearly about how to address the issue in a constructive way. You might approach the coworker later in private to clarify the situation and assert your contributions. Or in future meetings, you could make sure to proactively share your ideas yourself. The key here is that acceptance of the past doesn't prevent action in the present. It simply removes the emotional chaos that often clouds our judgment. Now, intelligent acceptance also comes with the realization that not all unfairness can or should be fixed. Some situations are simply beyond your control. Let's say a friend betrays your trust, causing you to lose something valuable, maybe an opportunity, time, or even emotional peace. While it may seem only fair that they apologize or work to make it right, the reality is you can't control their response or their willingness to take responsibility. Here, acceptance means letting go of the desire to demand justice from someone who may never offer it. It means focusing your energy on what you can do, setting boundaries, protecting yourself in the future, and moving forward without harboring resentment. By letting go of the uncontrollable, you free yourself from unnecessary suffering while still taking steps to protect your integrity. So, how can we handle such situations in a way that is both calm and firm? The Stoics encourage us to act with fairness and reason, even when others fail to do so. For instance, if someone spreads false rumors about you, an emotional reaction might lead you to confront them in anger or retaliate with negativity. But a Stoic approach would involve calmly addressing the issue. You could clarify the truth with the relevant parties in a composed and confident manner without resorting to insults or escalation. This way, you're not accepting the unfairness as permanent, but you're also not allowing it to dictate your emotional state or actions. Intelligent acceptance is about preserving your inner peace while navigating external challenges with grace and clarity. It's realizing that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can control how you respond, and that response can include constructive action. When you accept reality, you stop wasting energy fighting against what cannot be undone, and you direct that energy towards solutions, growth, and maintaining your values. Unfair situations lose their power when you meet them with this steady combination of calm acceptance and practical action. Sometimes the most powerful way to handle unfairness is to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. One of the cornerstones of Stoic philosophy is the idea of the cosmic perspective, the ability to zoom out and see our lives, our challenges, and even the actions of others within the vast, interconnected web of existence. The Stoics remind us that when we broaden our perspective, the things that feel overwhelming or unfair in the moment often shrink in significance. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations returns to this idea frequently. He writes, "Consider how many people do not even know your name, how many will quickly forget it, how many have never heard it. Consider how insignificant all human things are, passing as a river flows and as short-lived as smoke." To some, this might sound bleak, but for the Stoics, it's liberating. Why? Because it reminds us that much of what we agonize over, the hurtful comment, the missed opportunity, or the injustice we've experienced, is fleeting. In the vastness of time, these moments will pass just like everything else, and that realization can free us from the grip of anger or resentment. Imagine, for example, you've been treated unfairly at work, perhaps passed over for a promotion or unjustly criticized by a colleague. In the moment, it feels monumental, even consuming. You might replay the situation in your mind, wondering how it could happen or plotting your response. But what happens if you zoom out, if you ask yourself, will this matter in a week, a month, a year? Suddenly, the weight of the situation starts to ease. Viewed through the lens of time, most incidents lose their intensity, and when you extend that perspective even further, thinking about the decades ahead or the immensity of human history, it becomes clear just how small most of our troubles really are. The Stoics encourage us to see ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as part of a much larger whole. They understood that every person, every event, and every challenge exists within a vast and ever-changing universe. Marcus Aurelius often compared life to the flow of a river, constant, unstoppable, and ever-moving. He also reminded himself that life's difficulties, though painful in the moment, are part of a natural order. By viewing unfairness as just one of the countless events in this great flow of life, we can begin to let go of the idea that it's uniquely personal or permanent. Let's think about this practically. Imagine you're standing on the shore of a beach holding a handful of sand. Each grain represents a worry, a frustration, or an injustice you've experienced. Now look out at the vast ocean stretching to the horizon. That's the universe, limitless, immense, and endlessly enduring. When you focus on the grains of sand in your hand, they seem significant, all-encompassing even. But when you shift your gaze to the ocean, you realize how small and impermanent those grains really are. This is the power of the cosmic perspective. And it's not just about the scale of the universe, it's also about the brevity of life itself. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of mortality, not to create fear but to inspire clarity. He writes, "Don't forget that you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. It's a humbling thought. Life is short and our time is precious." Do we really want to waste that time stewing over the unfair actions of others, or do we want to use it to live meaningfully with purpose and virtue? When we embrace the cosmic perspective, unfairness loses its sting. It becomes just one moment in the unfolding story of life, a story far bigger than any single insult or injustice. So the next time you feel the weight of unfair treatment, pause and take a step back. Picture the vastness of the sky above you, the immensity of history behind you, and the flow of time carrying everything forward. Ask yourself, does this moment define me, or is it just one small ripple in the endless ocean of existence? By seeing the bigger picture, you reclaim your peace and gain the strength to move forward with clarity and grace. When confronted with unfairness, one of the most difficult yet empowering choices we face is how to respond. Do we seek to balance the scales with revenge, or do we uphold a higher standard by pursuing justice? For the Stoics, the answer is clear. Revenge is driven by emotion, while justice is guided by reason and virtue. And while revenge may feel satisfying in the moment, it often leads to greater harm for yourself, for others, and for the situation as a whole. Justice, on the other hand, ensures that your actions are rooted in fairness and integrity, regardless of how others behave. The Stoics drew a critical distinction between justice and revenge, warning against allowing emotions like anger, resentment, or pride to cloud judgment. Seneca, a Roman Stoic who often wrote about the destructive power of anger, said, "Revenge is an admission of pain. It is a confession that the injury has had an effect on you." In other words, when we act out of vengeance, we're giving the other person power over us. Their actions dictate our responses, pulling us away from the rational, composed mindset that the Stoics prized. Justice, however, is not about retaliation. It's about doing what's right, regardless of how we feel or what's been done to us. Take the example of Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers and a Roman emperor. As one of the most powerful men in history, Marcus could have easily wielded his authority to punish anyone who wronged him. Yet, in his writings, Marcus consistently emphasized the importance of acting justly, not vengefully. He reminded himself that other people's actions are often driven by ignorance or misunderstanding, and that it's our duty to respond with reason and fairness, not with anger or cruelty. In one instance, Marcus faced betrayal from his own general, Avidius Cassius, who declared himself emperor and attempted to overthrow him. While Marcus had every reason to respond with harsh punishment, especially given the treasonous nature of the act, he instead sought to resolve the situation with minimal bloodshed. He reportedly showed clemency toward those involved, focusing on preserving unity and demonstrating the principles of justice even in the face of personal betrayal. By doing so, Marcus maintained his integrity and adhered to his Stoic values. This approach is not limited to ancient history. It's something we can apply in our daily lives. Imagine, for example, that a colleague undermines you at work, spreading false information to take credit for your efforts. The natural urge may be to fight fire with fire, to expose their flaws in retaliation. But while this might feel satisfying in the short term, it doesn't align with the principle of justice. Instead, a Stoic response would involve addressing the situation clearly and fairly, without bitterness or malice. You might calmly clarify the truth with the relevant people or speak directly to the colleague in a constructive manner. By focusing on the outcome, restoring fairness and truth, you preserve your own sense of dignity without letting the other person's actions drag you down to their level. Justice also requires us to look at the bigger picture and consider the consequences of our actions. Revenge often escalates conflict, creating a cycle of harm that serves no one in the end. Justice, however, seeks resolution and balance. It's about doing what's right, not out of a desire to punish, but out of a commitment to fairness and harmony. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In other words, responding to unfairness with fairness is the highest form of strength, one that frees you from being controlled by others and allows you to remain true to your values. Ultimately, pursuing justice over revenge is about protecting your own integrity. When you act out of vengeance, you compromise who you are, letting anger or pride dictate your choices. But when you act justly, even in the face of unfair treatment, you demonstrate strength of character and stay aligned with the person you aspire to be. This, the Stoics would argue, is what truly matters. Justice isn't just about how you treat others. It's about how you uphold your own principles, no matter the circumstances. When unfairness strikes, it's natural to feel a surge of emotion, anger, frustration, maybe even a sense of helplessness. But if we allow those emotions to take over, we lose control of the one thing that truly belongs to us, our mind. This is where the Stoic practice of inner dialogue becomes a game changer. By engaging in rational self-talk, we not only calm the emotional storm, but we also regain clarity and shift our response from impulsive to thoughtful. The Stoics considered this a cornerstone of their philosophy, training the mind to interpret events wisely rather than reacting blindly to them. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This idea serves as the foundation of inner dialogue. When faced with an unfair situation, the first step is to pause and direct your attention inward. Instead of instantly reacting, you ask yourself guiding questions. What's really happening here? Is this worth my peace of mind? What's within my control and what isn't? These simple reflections can transform how you process the moment, allowing reason to take the lead rather than emotion. Let's walk through an example. Say someone interrupts you repeatedly during a conversation, dismissing your ideas as if they don't matter. Your initial impulse might be to lash out or shut down, fueled by the frustration of being disrespected. But a Stoic would invite you to engage in self-talk instead. In that moment you could think, why am I upset? Is it because I'm expecting this person to act differently? Their behavior reflects them, not me. What can I control right now? I can remain calm and assertively share my thoughts when they've finished speaking. Notice how this shift doesn't deny the unfairness of the situation, but it reframes it in a way that lets you focus on maintaining your dignity and self-control. Reframing is a powerful aspect of inner dialogue. It involves looking at the same situation from a different, more constructive angle. Marcus Aurelius often used this technique in his journaling, reminding himself to see events objectively rather than emotionally. For example, instead of labeling someone's behavior as rude or offensive, you might reframe it as a reflection of their own struggles or ignorance. This doesn't mean you excuse the behavior, but it helps you detach emotionally and respond with clarity. You might think, this wasn't about me, they're likely dealing with their own frustrations. I don't need to take this personally. Another useful practice in inner dialogue is addressing your emotions directly, almost as if you're having a conversation with them. Imagine you're angry because someone undermined you at work. Instead of letting that anger fester, you might say to yourself, "Okay, I feel angry right now. Why is it? Because I feel unappreciated. Does this moment define my abilities? No, it doesn't. My worth isn't determined by their actions. How can I handle this in a way that reflects my values?" By naming your emotions and exploring their root cause, you create space between the feeling and your response. That space is where wisdom lives. Epictetus also reminds us that we hold ultimate power over one key aspect of life, our thoughts. He said, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can get the better of my free will." This is a reminder that no matter how unfair someone's actions might be, they cannot dictate how we think or feel unless we allow them to. Inner dialogue is how we exercise that power. It's the practice of guarding our mind against external negativity and choosing thoughts that serve us rather than harm us. The beauty of this practice is that it's always available. No matter where you are or what's happening, you can guide yourself through rational self-talk. Start by asking questions that bring you back to reality. Is this as big as it feels right now? What would my best self do in this situation? How can I respond in a way I'll feel proud of later? Over time, this practice becomes second nature. Unfairness loses its ability to control you because you've trained your mind to reframe, refocus, and respond with wisdom. So, the next time someone treats you unfairly, remember, the first conversation you have isn't with them, it's with yourself. Make that conversation a thoughtful one, rooted in reason and strength. By doing so, you reclaim your power and handle the situation not as a victim of circumstance, but as the master of your own mind. Unfairness, while uncomfortable and often painful, is one of life's greatest tests of character. And the Stoics believed that these tests are not to be dreaded but embraced as opportunities for growth. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote, "Fire feeds on obstacles. As a flaming fire takes what is thrown into it and consumes it, rising higher, so a strong mind turns every obstacle into fuel." This powerful image reminds us that life's challenges, including unfairness, are not just disruptions, they are raw materials for building resilience, patience, and wisdom. Think about it, when everything in life is easy, when others treat you fairly and situations go your way, there's little room for growth. But when unfairness strikes, when someone undermines you, judges you wrongly, or takes advantage of your good nature, you're presented with a choice. You can let it embitter you, drain your energy, and diminish your sense of self. Or you can rise above it, using the situation as an exercise to strengthen your character. Let's break this down. When you endure unfairness, your patience is tested. It's easy to remain calm and composed when people treat you well, but the real challenge lies in staying patient when they don't. Imagine waiting in a long line only to have someone cut in front of you. In that moment, your instinct might be to react with annoyance or anger, but is that reaction productive? What does it say about your ability to maintain your inner peace when facing minor injustices? The Stoic approach is to view moments like this as small but meaningful opportunities to practice patience. Each time you respond calmly to an unfair act, you're strengthening your ability to keep your composure in more significant situations. Unfairness also sharpens your wisdom. Every instance forces you to reflect on what you can control versus what you can't, teaching you to prioritize your energy. For example, if a coworker spreads false rumors about you, you can't control their behavior, but you can control your response. Do you spend days stewing over their actions, or do you focus on truth and calmly address the situation? By practicing discernment in the face of unfairness, you become wiser in choosing your battles and directing your efforts where they'll have the greatest impact. And perhaps most profoundly, enduring unfairness builds fortitude, the inner strength to face life's difficulties with courage and grace. The more you encounter challenges and choose to respond with integrity rather than bitterness, the tougher and more unshakable you become. This isn't about becoming emotionless or indifferent. It's about recognizing that unfairness is inevitable, but it doesn't have to break you. In fact, it can make you stronger. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the universe doesn't throw challenges at you to defeat you. It gives them to you to transform you. Think of it like training a muscle. Every time you lift a weight that feels heavy, you break the muscle down slightly, only for it to grow back stronger with time. In the same way, every time you face unfairness and choose to act with patience, wisdom, and fortitude, you're strengthening your character. Over time, this repeated training creates a version of yourself that is more resilient, more composed, and better equipped to handle life's unpredictability. So, the next time unfairness rears its head, pause and reframe the situation. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "How is this shaping me?" Picture each challenge as a piece of rough marble and your character as the sculpture being carved from it. Every blow, every stroke of the chisel refines you. The Stoics understood that adversity, whether fair or unfair, is the fire that tempers the soul. By adopting this mindset, you transform life's hardships into opportunities, becoming not only more resilient but also more deeply aligned with the virtues that define a meaningful life. One of the most practical tools the Stoics teach us for handling unfairness is Premeditatio Malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. This practice involves mentally preparing yourself for the challenges and setbacks you're likely to encounter before they happen. It's essentially a form of mental rehearsal where you visualize potential difficulties, like being treated unfairly, and imagine how you would respond with calm and composure. By anticipating these scenarios in advance, you train your mind to stay grounded and rational when they arise in real life. The logic behind Premeditatio Malorum is simple yet profound. If you've already pictured an event happening and rehearsed your response to it, you won't be caught off guard when the moment comes. Instead of reacting emotionally, you'll respond with clarity because you've already been there in your mind. Marcus Aurelius himself practiced this regularly. In his Meditations he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil." Notice how Marcus isn't being pessimistic here, he's being realistic. He's preparing his mind to face the realities of human behavior so that he can meet them with patience and understanding, not shock or anger. So, how can you incorporate Premeditatio Malorum into your life? One practical way is through visualization. Take a few minutes each morning or evening to reflect on the challenges you might face. Let's say you're going to work tomorrow, and you know there's a meeting where your ideas could be criticized unfairly. Visualize that scenario. Picture someone dismissing your contributions in front of the team. What emotions come up? Frustration, defensiveness, maybe even anger. Now, imagine yourself responding in a way that aligns with your values calmly, firmly, and without losing your composure. You might picture yourself taking a deep breath, offering a clear and confident reply, or simply choosing to let the comment pass without letting it rattle you. This mental rehearsal helps you internalize the response you want to give, so that when the scenario unfolds, you're ready. Another effective way to practice *Premeditatio Malorum* is through journaling. At the end of each day, you can reflect on any moments of unfairness you encountered and how you handled them. Were you able to maintain your calm, or did you react emotionally? Then take it a step further. Think about the challenges you might face tomorrow. Write down a few scenarios, maybe a difficult conversation with a family member, a potential issue at work, or even encountering a rude stranger. For each situation, jot down how you'd like to respond, drawing on Stoic principles like patience, courage, and wisdom. This act of planning your response in advance trains your brain to react more positively in the moment. To connect this practice to modern life, think of it like preparing for an important event. If you are going to give a big presentation, you wouldn't just wing it. You'd rehearse, visualize the potential questions, and think through how you'd handle any nerves. *Premeditatio Malorum* is the same concept, but applied to the presentations of daily life, those interactions, setbacks, and moments of unfairness that we so often handle impulsively. By training yourself to anticipate and prepare, you transform a source of stress into an exercise in self-mastery. This practice isn't about dwelling on negativity or becoming fatalistic, it's about building resilience. When you walk into a challenging situation already prepared for the worst, life's surprises lose their power to shake you. You become better equipped to handle the unfairness of others with poise and grace. And over time, this preparation shapes not only your responses but also your overall sense of confidence and peace. By expecting the trials of life, you become unshakable when they inevitably appear. When we encounter unfair situations, it's easy to let our emotions take control. Anger, frustration, resentment, they can all sweep over us in an instant, demanding our attention and draining our energy. But the Stoics teach us that our emotional energy is one of our most precious resources. They believed that spending this energy wisely on things that truly matter was essential for living a purposeful and fulfilling life. And when it comes to dealing with unfairness, this principle becomes especially powerful. Think of your emotional energy like a bank account. Every time you react angrily to an injustice, replay a situation in your mind, or carry resentment towards someone, you're withdrawing from that account. After a while, if you're not careful, you can run low, leaving you feeling exhausted, distracted, and unable to focus on the things that actually bring value to your life. The Stoics remind us to pause and ask, is this particular situation worth my emotional investment? Does it deserve a significant withdrawal from my limited bank? Epictetus once advised, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. What he's saying here is profound. No one else can control your emotions unless you allow them to. The moment you let someone's unfair behavior consume you with anger or frustration, you're essentially handing over your control. And for what? Most of the time, our strong emotional reactions don't solve the problem. They don't change the other person's behavior or make the situation fairer. Instead, they often just drain your energy and leave you feeling worse. The Stoic approach is to conserve that energy for pursuits that matter. Instead of focusing on the unfairness itself, shift your attention to what you can do about it. Focus on solutions, not reactions. For example, if someone takes credit for your work in a meeting, you can choose to spend hours stewing over the injustice or venting to coworkers. Or you can calmly plan the next steps. Maybe set up a private conversation with your manager to clarify your contributions, or document your future work more proactively to avoid misunderstandings. Notice the difference here. When you focus on solutions, you conserve your energy and direct it towards something productive, rather than letting it dissipate in frustration. This mindset is especially helpful in everyday interactions. Imagine a stranger cuts you off in traffic or speaks to you rudely. It's tempting to let your anger flare up, maybe even retaliate with an angry gesture or sharp response. But think about the energy that costs you. Letting that moment dictate your emotional state sets a tone for the rest of your day, interrupting your focus, souring your mood, and achieving nothing. Instead, the Stoics would encourage you to ask yourself, is this worth my peace of mind? Is this worth the emotional energy I could be spending on my goals, my loved ones, or my own self-improvement? Most of the time, the answer is no. By letting the moment pass and choosing not to engage, you save your energy for things that truly deserve it. This doesn't mean avoiding action altogether in situations of unfairness. In fact, the Stoics valued taking constructive action when appropriate. They just believed in doing so without unnecessary emotional baggage. If a friend treats you unfairly, for instance, instead of lashing out or holding a grudge, you could have an honest and calm discussion about your feelings. Or if the unfairness persists, you might decide to set boundaries or shift the nature of your relationship. The difference is that your actions come from a place of strength and clarity, not from the instability of unchecked emotions. By choosing your emotional energy wisely, you not only handle unfair situations with greater composure, but you also create more space for the things that truly matter: your passions, your goals, and your well-being. Life is too short to waste on battles that lead nowhere. As Marcus Aurelius advises, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you master the ability to spend your emotional energy selectively, you unlock the freedom to live with purpose, unburdened by the chaos others bring into your life. Silence, it's one of the most underrated responses when we're faced with unfairness, and yet it's one of the most powerful. In Stoicism, the practice of silence isn't about weakness or passivity, it's about control. It's about mastering yourself and refusing to let someone else's words or actions dictate your behavior. When we respond to unfairness with silence, we signal not only our composure, but also our ability to rise above the chaos, to choose rationality over impulsivity. The power of silence lies in its ability to diffuse conflict. Think about it. Most arguments, accusations, or moments of confrontation escalate because we feel the need to immediately defend ourselves, explain, or fight back. But if we pause and remain silent, we deny the situation the fuel it needs to grow. This isn't about avoiding responsibility or running away from problems. It's about knowing when words will serve a purpose and when they'll simply add noise to an already tense situation. Silence gives you the space to reflect, to assess whether a response is necessary, and if so, to craft one that is thoughtful and aligned with your values. Let's consider a specific example. Imagine you're in a team meeting at work, and a colleague unfairly accuses you of dropping the ball on an important project. The accusation catches you off guard, and your first instinct might be to jump in and defend yourself, pointing out their mistakes or explaining in a flurry of words why they're wrong. But what happens in that moment of defense? Tension escalates, emotions take the forefront, the meeting veers off course, and instead of solving the actual issue, everyone walks away feeling more frustrated. Now imagine you respond differently. Instead of rushing to defend yourself, you pause. You take a deep breath and remain silent for just a few moments. Instead of reacting out of anger or frustration, you calmly say, "I'll need a moment to think about that," or "Let's discuss this after the meeting." That silence, measured and deliberate, completely shifts the dynamic. It shows that you're in control of yourself, and it diffuses the immediate heat of the situation. This kind of measured silence also communicates confidence. When you don't feel the need to react immediately, you signal that you're not rattled by the accusation. You're showing that your sense of self-worth isn't contingent on others' opinions or words. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Silence gives you the power to decide how to react rather than letting the moment decide for you. Beyond avoiding escalation, silence also gives you time to gather your thoughts, to reflect on your principles, and to decide whether responding is even necessary. Not every unfair comment or action requires a counterargument. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words by showing that the situation doesn't even warrant a reaction. This is especially true when dealing with people who thrive on conflict or drama. By not engaging, you deprive them of the response they're looking for, and you maintain your peace in the process. Of course, this doesn't mean silence is always the answer. There are times when unfairness must be addressed directly and harm must be corrected. But even in those cases, a deliberate pause, a moment of silence allows you to approach the issue with clarity and calmness, rather than emotion-driven impulsiveness. In the end, responding with silence is an act of mastery over oneself. It shows that you're not controlled by the actions or words of others, but instead guided by your own principles and reason. The next time you're faced with an unfair accusation or situation, remember this: silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of strength. Let it be a tool in your Stoic toolkit, one that allows you to navigate life's challenges with grace, dignity, and unshakable calm. When we experience unfair treatment, it's natural to immediately label the other person as selfish, rude, or even cruel. But what if instead of making a judgment, we approach the situation with curiosity? The Stoics teach us that understanding the motives or context behind someone's actions can completely transform how we respond. By seeking to understand rather than condemn, we not only gain clarity but also maintain our calm in the face of adversity. Epictetus reminds us, when someone behaves badly, it is because they do not know any better. This principle forms the foundation of the Stoic approach to understanding unfairness. From a Stoic perspective, people's actions are often shaped by their own limitations, whether that's ignorance, insecurity, or circumstances we may know nothing about. When someone acts unfairly, it's rarely about you. Most of the time, it's a reflection of what's happening in their internal world. Let's pause and explore this with a relatable example. Imagine you're at work and a colleague publicly criticizes you in front of the team. It feels unfair, humiliating even, and your first instinct might be anger or defensiveness. But the Stoics would encourage you to step back and ask, what might be driving their behavior? Are they lashing out because they feel insecure in their own role? Are they under intense pressure from leadership, leading them to project their stress onto others? Or are they simply unaware that their comment came across as harsh? Without excusing their actions, this shift from judgment to curiosity helps you see the situation more objectively. Instead of taking their behavior personally, you recognize it as a symptom of something deeper, and you respond with calm rather than anger. This mindset doesn't just protect your inner peace, it also opens the door for a more thoughtful, effective response. Imagine if, instead of reacting defensively to your colleague's criticism, you approach them later with genuine curiosity. I noticed you pointed out an issue with my work earlier. Can we talk about that? I'd like to understand your perspective better. This kind of response not only diffuses tension but also demonstrates emotional intelligence, potentially turning a challenging moment into an opportunity for clarity and collaboration. Curiosity also helps us realize that unfairness can be unintentional. Think about how often we've been guilty of behaving unfairly ourselves, not out of malice, but because we were distracted, stressed, or simply unaware of how our actions affected others. Marcus Aurelius captures this idea when he writes, "Whenever someone has done wrong by you, immediately consider what notion of good or evil they had in doing it. For when you see that, you'll pity them and you won't feel either surprise or anger." By recognizing the limitations behind someone's behavior, we develop empathy instead of resentment. This doesn't mean tolerating or excusing unfair actions. It means responding from a place of strength, wisdom, and understanding. Now, how can we apply this in everyday life? The next time someone treats you unfairly, whether it's a stranger cutting in line, a friend canceling plans without notice, or a coworker undermining your efforts, pause and ask yourself, what might be going on in their world right now? What might they be thinking or feeling that led them to act this way? Even if you can't know the full story, simply shifting your perspective in this way can help you stay calm and focused on what truly matters, your own response. This practice doesn't just help you navigate unfairness, it strengthens your overall mindset. By cultivating curiosity instead of judgment, you train yourself to see people as human rather than as obstacles or enemies. And as you do, you take control of the one thing that's always within your power, your ability to respond with patience, clarity, and unshakable calm. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood concepts when it comes to dealing with unfairness. Many people believe that forgiving someone means excusing their behavior, letting them off the hook, or pretending the wrongdoing never happened. But the Stoics would argue that forgiveness is not about the other person at all, it's about freeing yourself. It's about letting go of the destructive emotions that weigh you down, so you can focus on what truly matters, your peace of mind, your actions, and your values. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers, beautifully captured this idea when he said, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." What Seneca is reminding us here is that holding on to resentment can do more damage to our own well-being than the unfair treatment ever could. When we dwell on how someone wronged us, replaying the situation in our minds and nurturing feelings of anger or bitterness, we remain trapped in the past. The unfair act might be over, but we carry its weight with us, allowing it to dictate our thoughts, emotions, and even our behavior. Forgiveness in this context isn't about excusing the unfairness. It's about refusing to let it have power over you. To see this in action, consider this scenario. A friend you deeply trusted betrays your confidence, sharing something personal you confided in them. Naturally, this feels unfair and hurtful. Your first instinct might be to hold onto that betrayal, to let it fester as anger or even a desire to retaliate. But what does that accomplish? Does replaying their actions in your mind bring you any closer to peace? Does clinging to resentment change the fact that it happened? The Stoics would say no. Instead, they'd encourage you to practice forgiveness, not for the sake of your friend, but for your own freedom. Forgiveness in a Stoic sense is a deliberate choice to release the grip of destructive emotions. It doesn't mean you condone the betrayal or that you have to rebuild the relationship. You can forgive someone and still set boundaries to protect yourself in the future. What matters is that you let go of the resentment because it no longer serves you. By forgiving, you reclaim your emotional energy and direct it toward things that align with your values, be it cultivating other friendships, focusing on personal growth, or simply maintaining your inner tranquility. This approach to forgiveness also ties back to the Stoic belief in understanding human nature. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people act poorly out of ignorance or misunderstanding, not malice. If someone treats you unfairly, it's often a reflection of their own inner struggles or flaws, not a deliberate attack on you. Recognizing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does help you release the anger and judgment that keep you tied to the situation. It allows you to see the unfairness objectively and move forward without carrying the weight of resentment. Think of forgiveness as decluttering your mind. Just as we let go of physical objects that no longer serve us, we can let go of emotions that only create noise in our lives. When you forgive someone, you're choosing not to dwell in the pain of the past. You're choosing freedom over imprisonment. So, the next time you're confronted with someone who treats you unfairly, ask yourself, Does holding onto this anger help me, or is it keeping me stuck? Remember Seneca's wisdom about the harm of unchecked anger, and consider forgiveness not as a gift to the person who wronged you, but as a gift to yourself. In doing so, you embody the Stoic ideals of rationality, self-mastery, and inner peace, demonstrating that no unfairness has the power to control your state of mind. When faced with unfairness, it's easy to fixate on the wrongs done to us, letting them overshadow everything else in our lives. We find ourselves replaying the hurt, dwelling on the injustice, and sometimes even letting it consume our thoughts. But the Stoics offer us a radically different approach, one that shifts our focus from what's lacking or unfair to what's abundant and good. This practice is gratitude, and it's a powerful tool for regaining perspective and inner calm, even in the face of life's challenges. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations often reflected on gratitude. Despite being an emperor burdened with the enormous stresses of ruling a vast empire, he made time to remind himself of the good in his life. In one poignant passage, he lists the people who have positively influenced him, his family, his teachers, his friends, and acknowledges how much he has learned and gained from each of them. He didn't write these meditations to show the world how grateful he was. He wrote them for himself as a way to foster a mindset of appreciation. Even surrounded by the chaos and challenges of his position, he intentionally turned his attention to what deserved gratitude, not to what fueled frustration. So, how can we apply this practice today, especially when confronted with unfairness? The Stoics teach us to focus on what remains untouched by the actions of others. While someone else's unfair treatment might upset us, it doesn't diminish the things we already have to be thankful for. Our health, the love of family or friends, the opportunities we've been given, or even just the small, steady joys of daily life, a warm meal, a beautiful sunset, or a moment of peace. When we choose to notice these things, we remind ourselves that life is far more than the injustices we encounter. Let's consider a practical example. Imagine you've had a falling out with a coworker who has treated you unfairly, maybe by spreading rumors or taking credit for your efforts. It's a troubling situation, and it's natural to feel hurt or angry. But rather than letting that unfairness dominate your thoughts, you can pause and ask yourself, what can I still be grateful for? Perhaps you're grateful for the other colleagues who respect and support you. Maybe you're thankful for the skills and knowledge you've developed in your role, which no one can take from you. Or perhaps you're simply appreciative of the opportunity to work and grow, knowing that this moment doesn't define your entire career. By shifting your focus to gratitude, you begin to see the bigger picture. You take back control over your mindset, refusing to let someone else's actions eclipse the positive aspects of your life. Another key insight from the Stoics is that even unfairness itself can be a reason for gratitude. This might sound counterintuitive, but think about it. Every challenge, every injustice is an opportunity to practice patience, resilience, and wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, what we view as obstacles can actually help us grow. When treated unfairly, we can be grateful for the chance to strengthen our character, to practice courage in adversity, patience in frustration, or forgiveness in the face of harm. These are the moments that shape us into stronger, better individuals. To cultivate gratitude amid unfairness, start by reflecting on what you do have. Take a moment each day to write down or think about 3 things you're grateful for, big or small. Maybe it's the roof over your head, the kind words of a friend, or simply the fact that you woke up this morning with another chance to live and improve. This practice doesn't erase unfairness, but it balances your perspective, reminding you that life is more than its challenges. Gratitude is not about denying the reality of unfairness or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about grounding yourself in the good and just parts of life, the things no one can take from you. When you make gratitude your focus, you choose to see beyond the unfairness, drawing strength from what remains abundant and good. And through this practice, you become less defined by what happens to you and more empowered by how you choose to see and respond to the world. Unfair situations often feel like setbacks, moments where the world seems to conspire against us or where others' actions feel like a personal affront. But what if we approach these moments not as losses but as opportunities? The Stoics believed that every challenge, including unfairness, comes with the potential to teach us something valuable about others, about life, and most importantly, about ourselves. By shifting our perspective and adopting a growth mindset, we can transform even the most unjust circumstances into powerful lessons for self-improvement. A growth mindset, popularized in modern psychology, is the belief that our abilities, character, and understanding are not fixed. They can be developed through effort, reflection, and learning. This concept aligns beautifully with Stoic philosophy, which centers on the idea that life's trials are not there to defeat us but to refine us. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of this, writing, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. In other words, while we cannot control unfairness, we can control how we respond to it, and in that response lies the opportunity to grow. Think about a time when you were treated unfairly. Perhaps a coworker took advantage of your hard work, or a close friend let you down in a moment of need. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to feel angry, hurt, or even vindictive. But once those emotions subside, the Stoics would encourage you to ask, what can I learn from this? What does this situation reveal about the people involved, the circumstances, or even about yourself? For instance, if a colleague undermines you in a professional setting, that moment of unfairness can teach you several things. It might highlight a need for better communication or boundaries with your team. It might reveal gaps in trust or cooperation that can be addressed. Or on a personal level, it might show you how deeply you value recognition and fairness, giving you the chance to reflect on why those values matter to you. Each of these insights becomes a tool for self-improvement, allowing you to grow not in spite of the challenge, but because of it. The Stoics also saw unfairness as a mirror, an opportunity to better understand not only others but also ourselves. When someone wrongs us, our initial reactions can reveal a lot about our own values, triggers, and emotional tendencies. Do you immediately feel the need to prove yourself or seek validation? Does anger flare up, or do you retreat into yourself, avoiding confrontation? These reactions are windows into our inner workings, areas where we can focus our self-improvement efforts. Epictetus encouraged this kind of reflection, saying, "When someone behaves badly toward you, consider what led them to do so. Once you understand their perspective, you'll see that anger is not necessary." His advice invites us not only to understand others, but also to evaluate how we interpret and internalize their actions. Learning from unfairness doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. It means turning it into an opportunity for self-awareness and growth. Take another example. Imagine a friend cancels plans with you at the last minute, and this isn't the first time it's happened. You could write it off as a reflection of their flaws, but you could also use the moment to examine your own expectations and boundaries. Do you have a tendency to overextend your generosity without voicing your needs? Are you surrounding yourself with people who respect your time and energy? These questions, sparked by an unfair act, can lead to valuable personal insights. The Stoics remind us that life isn't about avoiding difficulties, it's about using them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In this view, unfairness isn't just an obstacle, it's a stepping stone. Each unfair situation offers us something to take forward, whether it's greater resilience, clearer values, or improved relationships. So, the next time unfairness crosses your path, pause and reframe the moment. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" Whether the lesson lies in strengthening your patience, better understanding the people around you, or identifying areas for growth within yourself, these experiences become opportunities to sharpen your character. Embracing this mindset transforms unfairness from something that holds you back to something that propels you forward, turning every challenge into a teacher. Unfair situations, no matter how painful or frustrating they might feel in the moment, share one thing in common with everything else in life: they're temporary. This is one of the most grounding lessons the Stoics offer us. They believe that impermanence is woven into the fabric of existence. Just as joy and success come and go, so too do hardship and unfairness. When we deeply internalize this truth, it becomes easier to handle life's challenges with patience and perspective. Simply put, what seems overwhelming today will eventually fade into yesterday. Marcus Aurelius, whose reflections continually bring us back to this idea of fleeting moments, wrote, "Time is like a river made up of the events which happen, and a violent stream. For as soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, and another comes in its place." Think about that for a moment. Life is like a flowing river, always moving, always changing. Whatever we're experiencing now, be it joy, sorrow, or the sting of unfair treatment, is just one part of that flow. It will pass, carried downstream by the current of time, making room for whatever is next. Let's apply this principle to the unfair situations we face. Imagine a difficult moment, like being unfairly blamed for a mistake at work. In the heat of that moment, the injustice feels enormous, as though it's the only thing that matters. But when you step back and remind yourself of impermanence, everything shifts. Will this situation feel as important to you next week? Will it still cloud your thoughts a month from now? Chances are, as time moves on, the intensity of the experience will fade. The details will blur, and what feels sharp and overwhelming now will become just another memory. By embracing this perspective, you allow yourself to release the emotional weight of the moment, knowing it's not permanent. This realization doesn't mean dismissing your feelings or pretending the unfairness doesn't exist. Instead, it's about seeing it for what it truly is: temporary. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "Do not be disturbed, for all things are according to nature, and in a little time you will be nobody and nowhere, like Hadrian and Augustus." While this might seem harsh at first glance, it's a profound reminder of life's fleeting nature. Even the greatest emperors, with all their triumphs and tribulations, were subject to time's relentless flow. The same applies to our smaller, everyday struggles. Impermanence levels the playing field, reminding us that nothing, neither triumph nor injustice, lasts forever. Consider, too, how many moments of unfairness you've already moved past in your life. A hurtful remark from a family member years ago, a time when a teacher graded you unfairly, a situation where a friend let you down. In those moments, the unfairness likely felt all-consuming, but now they're memories, distant and far less significant than they once seemed. This is the gift of impermanence. It softens the edges of hardship and helps us focus on what truly matters. When you're in the middle of an unfair situation, it's easy to feel stuck, as though it will define you or your life forever. But the Stoics remind us to zoom out, to see the broader context of our lives, and to trust in the passage of time. The river will keep flowing, and so will you. The next time you're faced with unfairness, turn to this question: will this matter a year from now, 5 years from now, or will it be one of many moments that has come and gone, leaving me stronger and wiser in its wake? By focusing on impermanence, you give yourself the space to let go of immediate frustrations and instead shift your energy toward growth and resilience. Life is constantly moving forward, and so can we. The unfairness you feel today is not a permanent fixture. It is simply a moment passing through like leaves on the current of a river. Remember that, and you'll find it much easier to keep your calm and carry on with clarity and strength. Building emotional resilience doesn't happen overnight. It's not something we can simply decide to have. It's something we cultivate through consistent practice. The Stoics knew that just like physical strength, resilience is built little by little, one intentional action at a time. And when we proactively work on it, we become less vulnerable to the emotional weight of unfairness. Each moment of frustration or injustice becomes less impactful, and over time, we develop an inner calm that can't be easily shaken. So, how do we start building this resilience? The Stoics believed that consistent practice of their principles was key. They didn't see philosophy as something to think about passively. They saw it as a daily exercise, a discipline to be strengthened through action. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books every day." What he's suggesting here is a kind of mental workout, a daily habit of reflection and preparation that builds strength over time. One of the most effective ways to practice Stoicism and build emotional resilience is through journaling. Marcus Aurelius himself was a dedicated journaler, and his private reflections became the basis for his famous Meditations. By journaling, you create a space to process your thoughts, emotions, and experiences in a structured way. But more importantly, it's an opportunity to apply Stoic principles directly to your daily life. For example, at the end of each day, you could reflect on moments where unfairness challenged your calm. Ask yourself, how did I respond? Did I act in line with my values? What could I do better next time? This practice not only helps you learn from each experience, but also reinforces the idea that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. To take it a step further, you might include what the Stoics called premeditation exercises in your journaling. These involve visualizing potential difficulties before they happen and mentally preparing for how you'll handle them. For instance, in your morning reflections, you could think about the day ahead. Consider situations where you might face unfairness or frustration, a colleague taking credit for your work, a rude comment from a stranger, or plans falling through unexpectedly. Write down how you'd like to respond in those moments. By doing this, you're not waiting for challenges to catch you off guard. You're training yourself to face them with clarity and composure. Another powerful daily exercise is gratitude. It might seem unrelated to resilience at first, but gratitude shifts your focus away from what's unfair and onto what's good in your life. At the end of each day, try listing 3 things you're grateful for, no matter how small they may seem. Maybe it's a kind word from a friend, the taste of your morning coffee, or simply the fact that you kept your calm in a difficult moment. Over time, this practice rewires your mindset, helping you see life's challenges in the larger context of everything you have to be thankful for. Consistency is the key here. Just as lifting a single weight doesn't build muscle, practicing Stoic principles once won't fundamentally change how you handle unfairness. But repeating these small exercises, journaling, reflecting, practicing gratitude day after day creates a foundation of emotional strength. Over time, you'll notice unfair situations striking you less deeply. You'll find yourself reacting less and responding more, with a calm that comes not from suppressing emotions, but from having built resilience through deliberate effort. The beauty of this process is that it compounds. Each time you face a challenge and reflect on it, each time you prepare for a possible difficulty and meet it with calm, you're strengthening your emotional core. With consistency, you begin to notice the shift. Life's inevitable unfairnesses still exist, but their power over you begins to fade. And that is the essence of Stoic resilience, facing the world as it is, with a steady mind and a stronger heart, built through the daily practice of wisdom and reflection. As we come to the end of this exploration into how to handle unfair people without losing your Stoic calm, let's take a moment to reflect on the principles we've covered. At the core of Stoicism lies the idea that we can't control what others do, but we can always control how we respond. Unfairness will come into our lives, it's inevitable. But how we handle it is entirely within our power. We began by understanding the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control, separating what we can influence, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, from what we cannot, like others' behavior or external circumstances. This is the foundation of maintaining your inner calm. When you let go of the need to control what's beyond your reach, you free yourself from unnecessary frustration and create the space to act with wisdom. Then we explored how reframing unfairness can help us see it in a new light. By reminding ourselves that most people act out of ignorance, limitations, or their own struggles, we can cultivate empathy instead of anger. And through practices like patience, silence, and forgiveness, we learn how to respond in ways that reflect our values rather than our emotions. Resilience was another key theme. Life's challenges, including unfair situations, aren't just difficulties to endure, they're opportunities to grow stronger. Each moment of adversity allows us to practice patience, self-control, and clarity. As Marcus Aurelius so wisely put it, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, even the obstacles we face can serve as stepping stones for our personal growth. And finally, we touched on the practice of gratitude and maintaining perspective. By focusing on what's good in our lives and remembering that most hardships are temporary, we shift our energy away from resentment and toward living a fuller, more meaningful life. So how can you take these ideas and apply them to your daily life? Start small. When someone treats you unfairly, try pausing before you react. Take a breath and remind yourself of what's in your control. Practice regular reflection, whether through journaling or simply reviewing your day, to identify moments when you successfully upheld your calm, or moments when you didn't, and what you can do differently next time. And perhaps most importantly, stay committed to acting in line with your values no matter how others behave. As the Stoics teach us, virtue, living in alignment with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline, is its own reward. Let's leave off with one final thought from Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This single sentence captures the heart of Stoicism. It reminds us that no matter how unfair others are, no matter how challenging life becomes, our true power lies in how we choose to think and act. If these ideas resonate with you, I encourage you to reflect on how you can bring them into your life. Maybe start with just one small practice, like pausing for a moment of silence the next time someone irritates you, or journaling about a recent challenge and what you learned from it. Over time, these small steps add up, shaping a mindset of calm resilience that becomes second nature. Let me know in the comments, how do you handle unfair situations in your life? Have you tried any Stoic practices, and if so, what's worked for you? I'd love to hear your experiences. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more insights on Stoicism and living a life of purpose. Thank you for watching, and remember, the way you respond to the world is always within